Hi everyone, thanks for having me. It's awesome to be here and excited to talk to you all. My name is Duncan Elms. I'm a creative director working in title sequences, commercials, and content for shows and documentaries. I'm originally from the UK, and I did high school and uni in Australia. And in my work career, I've worked in Sydney, London, New York, and LA. And the last 6.5 years, I've worked at Elastic. I've actually been remote from Sydney for the last couple. I'm going to talk about my career journey, go through some projects, and talk about some things that I've learned along the way. So hopefully this can inspire you in some of the work that you do. So first, we will check out my reel. Thank you. So these are all the people that have contributed to projects on the show reel, including producers. So I wanted to say, firstly, thanks to all of them. And I feel really kind of proud to have worked with them all, and a lot of them I call friends now. So thanks to everyone on the list. One of the most important things in the industry is how we work in a team. It's important to strive for quality, but also to try and be humble and ego-free, and to try and have fun and make positive connections along the way. So that brings me to 3 pillars of my career, and that's positive connections, personal projects, and travel and new experiences. So a lot of the opportunities that I've had have been from people that I've met previously, have opened doors for me later on in my career. Personal projects really helped for me to develop my style and get my name out there. And travel, like I said, I've worked in Australia, the UK, and the US. And I believe that meeting new people and working at new companies really helped elevate my craft. So how did I get started? So when I was finishing high school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. But my mum always encouraged me and my siblings to go traveling. So I took a year off and started working, saving money, and then went off on a trip around Southeast Asia with a friend of mine. And before I left, I bought a SLR camera. And so that helped me to develop my love of photography, which in turn helped me to develop my creative eye and eye for composition. So here's a photo of young, carefree me on the back of a boat in Vietnam. I must warn you that that's what I looked like before I joined the industry. So if my transformation alarms you, now's the time to escape. So here's some of the photos that I was taking. And then when I got back, I just immersed myself in photography, started taking portraits of friends and family and doing street photography. And then when I got to uni, I was actually doing IT, but I had one media subject, and that's where I discovered Photoshop. And there I saw I could take my photos and add colors and typography. And yeah, that's what I loved. So I moved over to a media degree. And from there, I started learning TV production, design, photography. And around this time, early 2000s, I was reading a lot of this magazine called Lowdown magazine from Germany. It's like a street culture magazine, music, skating, had some really cool art direction. So it's kind of all of my interests. And on their website, they had these really cool flash animations. And when I saw that, I knew that's what I wanted to do motion design. So I started learning Flash, and then after that, After Effects. So the interest of time, I'm fast forwarding 6 years, and now we're looking at my 2010 showreel. So I had a couple of full-time jobs in Sydney, and then went freelance and worked in Sydney, went over to London, met a bunch of different people. And then back in Sydney, a job came up on this TV show called Hungry Beasts Season 3. And that was like a youth current affairs show with these really cool graphics. So I went in to meet the CD, Pat Clare, and he liked my work, but he also liked that I knew this guy and worked with this guy called Luca from Like Minded Studio. So that was the first time a positive connection had kind of helped me later on. So I ended up getting the job. And Pat had set this really cool style, very bold and graphic, lots of infographics. It was quick turnaround, but a lot of creative freedom. So here's some of the work that we were doing. Lots of infographics, animated quotes, and then some show branding as well. And then from there, I got a couple of jobs at the ABC working on chaser shows, doing branding and show graphics for them. And then a couple of years later, I decided I wanted to take some time off and do a personal project. So I reached out to my friend Mark Fennell, tech journalist on Hungry Beast, to see if he had any ideas for scripts. And he was like, yeah, there's this new technology called Bitcoin. So I was like, oh yeah, sounds interesting, let's do it. So he sent me a script and 3.5-minute voiceover. And yeah, it took some time off to work on this project. So it was about 6 weeks. Then when it released, ended up getting Vimeo staff pick. And from there, featured on lots of different sites, design and technology and animation sites. So it really helped get my name up there. Fortunately, I didn't buy any Bitcoins. I just made the video. Otherwise, I'd be chilling in the Bahamas right now. But as I say, what happened, I got my name out there, and that led to a lot of direct-to-client work. So then I started learning how to price my work, how to schedule my work, how to deal with clients. And then when I got busy, I started working with freelancers. So now I was learning how to creative direct artists and how to work on multiple jobs at a time. And then another direct-to-client job came up. This was for Alex Webb from Bill and Ted's Adventure. So he was doing a doco about the deep web, and he needed some explainer graphics. So he reached out, and I worked with him on that. And that was really cool because Keanu ended up doing the voiceover. So it's cool to have that in the portfolio. So around that time, me and my partner decided to go to America to do some travel and look for work opportunities. So we ended up doing a road trip from Cali to Seattle, across to Chicago, and then after a bit of time in Canada, ended up in New York City. And then my partner ended up getting a job there, and she got sponsored on the E3 visa. And so we were actually already engaged, but then we were like, yeah, let's get married. So went to Canada, and that allowed me to get the E3D visa, which means you can freelance. So it's perfect for the motion design world. So still doing direct-to-client work, but I wanted to work with local studios. A friend of mine from uni was actually working at the Mill LA. So he introduced me to the Mill New York, and I went in there and started doing lots of freelance projects. This was one for KPMG. And then an Aussie guy at the Mill, who I'd also worked with in Sydney at Animal Logic, was doing a lot of work at Frame Store, and he invited me to come over there. So I went over, did some projects, and met the creative director. And he said there's an opportunity in LA to move over there. So I went over and had a meeting and ended up getting the job. Moved over to LA and helped them set up their design department with another design director and worked on a bunch of projects. And then 18 months later, another opportunity came up. So Pat Clare from the Hungry Beast days, he was now in LA doing amazing work at Elastic. And he invited me over to have a meeting with the EP, Jen. So went over, had a positive meeting with her and ended up getting the job. So a really exciting time for me. And this is the first project or title sequence that I worked on over there. And like many projects, it started off with a simple idea. It's for James Cameron's history of science fiction. So they had these interviews that were set in this warehouse environment with lots of neon backlighting. So we pitched some different ideas, and one of them took inspiration from that lighting. These are the pitch frames, and the client ended up liking this direction, so moved into production. So we started looking at ref to determine the different objects to feature that would represent science fiction, so things like space travel, aliens, robot warriors, and then started backlighting them and putting them in this warehouse environment set. So let's check out the spot. So that was for AMC, and they really liked it, and they invited us to do another one for Eli Roth's History of Horror. These are the frames here, done by Felix Solitic. So now moving on to another project for Blumhouse. So they came to us and they wanted an update to their ident, that's for the iconic horror brand. So these are examples of their old versions. They had a lot of scary things happening in one room, but we wanted to travel and explore the whole house. They've got a huge back catalog of movies, so we wanted to pay homage to that collection by featuring different props from the movies and then scatter them throughout the house in the different rooms. So we started looking at set reference. We wanted to do something that represented the classic American family home and give it a nostalgic feel. And go with these minimalist compositions with maybe 2 or 3 props in each room. And of course, have dark and moody cinematic lighting reminiscent of classic horror movies. So we started looking at all the different movies they had and deciding what props to use. We wanted things that would be symbolic but not too obvious. So here's some examples. So for Black Klansman, we used the vintage phone that they used to do the prank calls. Freaky, we have the hook. Get Out, the deer's head and the teacup. For Halloween, we've got Michael Myers in the forest at the beginning. Happy Death Day, we use the cake. Insidious, we've got the pointing character is in one of the rooms. And yeah, you get the idea from there. So we just moved into design exploration. So we decided we want to have more than 2 or 3 props and hide multiple props in all of the rooms and have something that fans would have to rewatch and try to guess all the Easter eggs and guess what films they were from. Then we experimented with different lighting styles, perhaps taking it more stylized. And now we're checking out some of the final designs done by Carlos Sa. So at first we had the Hush guy was going to be outside in the forest, but we ended up switching him out for Michael Myers. And then one of my favorites, the pig, from The Hunt, even though the animation team were a little worried about that one. And then there's the teacup, the Purge twins, and then here we see a lot of the different props within one of the rooms. And some of them are very subtle. We have the handprint of the invisible man on the mirror. And then the idea was to leave the house for the final ident reveal. So let's check out the spot. Thank you. So if that was a bit of a downer, I've got some coffee and chocolates to pep you up. So this was for KitKat Mocha Duo product launch. And they wanted to do something with the ingredients reacting to music. So this is some design and animation R&D.
KitKat is brewing up a
So it actually came at a pretty strange time because it was around the beginning of the pandemic. So we were all, pretending everything was normal and doing work, but kind of freaking out. But they did send us a whole load of chocolates, so made up for it a bit. So moving on to 1883, this is a Western drama prequel to Yellowstone. So the showrunner wanted to do something with tintype photography as a treatment for the titles. It's a really beautiful medium, so we started studying it and looking at all the beautiful details in the portraits and some of the imperfections in the exposures. And then we started doing some design exploration and pitching a few different ideas. This one looking at the liquid development process and maybe using the liquid as part of the transition process. And here, this is more based around the tactile nature of the photography and the imperfections of the canvas. And this one, a bit more of a bold, graphic, contemporary look. And then finally, a sepia-toned aesthetic. So they ended up liking these frames, designed by Philippe Carvalho. So then we moved into production with that style. And first we started looking at the different cast photos and choosing which ones to feature. So there's a variety of different poses for all of them. We wanted to have a nice variety within the final sequence, but also stay authentic to the real tintypes of the era. So as you can see, a lot of them look really good in profile, but we didn't want to have too many profile shots, so it's about getting that balance right. And now we're looking at some of the final designs. So we start off minimal. We have these ghostly ink patterns, and these look really beautiful in animation. Each frame has custom, kind of bespoke exposure marks in the comp and around the edges. Then we move into the cast portraits and some close-ups of the beautiful costumes. And then we move into telling the story of the series with landscapes, towns, and horses. And this was actually a photo from my original Cali road trip of an abandoned gold mining town. So it's cool to sneak that in there. And then, some with a bit more of a graphic look. Horses, playing with the inverted look of the negative. Again, all with these bespoke details and ink. Now looking at some behind the scenes. So we did these rough sculpts in Maya, and then that was brought into C4D, and we projected the photos onto the Geo. And that allows us to do camera moves in and also to have rotation on the actors. But we didn't want the technique to kind of overwhelm the sequence. So it was about being less is more. We wanted to really have a timeless feel and not have the technique overwhelm it. And here we're checking out all the different layers that went in there again, just trying to be subtle and have little movements with the light and the ink and just layering it to get depth. And this last one, we're using show footage, but we didn't want people to know what we were using, so it had to feel like old photos coming to life. So it's super slow-mo footage. Let's check out the people. Thanks, and if you like that, we just did a new one called Bass Reeves. It was about the first African-American lawman, so it's in a similar style to that that's coming out soon. So now I'll talk about how do I creative direct. Most importantly, you really need to know the brief, study the history, immerse yourself in it, read the backstories of the characters, take notes on key moments in the scripts, and really become an expert on that story or that brand. Creative freedom. I feel that motion design is all about experimentation and trying out new ideas. So if I tell someone exactly what to do, then that experimentation is restricted. So I'll set a few boundaries, but also allow freedom, and that allows artists to experiment with ideas and feel invested in the project. And strive for quality. Designers know that a little tweak to the texture or lighting or typography can have a big impact. Animators know that a tweak to the animation curve can really have a big impact on how fluid things feel. And same with editors, they know changing that cut point by even 1 or 2 frames has a big impact on the timing. So it's important to keep an eye on all those details and keep finessing and improving right until the very end. But at the same time, keep sight on the big picture. It's good to take a step back and reread the brief or think about the message that you're trying to convey, and make sure you don't get lost on one little particular shot, even if you've been working on it a long time. If it doesn't, fit with the final edit and the message, then you sometimes have to get rid of it. So now I'll talk about Nissan, this global rebrand. So this was the old logo called the hamburger, and then new one in 2D form. So the brief was to bring the logo to life using stylized natural elements and combine them all to make a brand film that slowly reveals the logo. So with the knowing the brief, in this case it was nature, so we had to study it for inspiration. Everything in the film had to sway and breathe and pulse and be alive like nature itself. And we wanted everything to react and move organically. And with creative freedom, by choosing the right artists for the team, I could let them experiment with design and animation ideas. And here's some of that design experimentation. Here, testing out what the different expressions could be and how we could stylize them. So here we have the cherry blossom in a minimalist environment, photoreal textures but in a graphic environment. And here trying out doing something more graphic with brand colors with sand. So there's a lot of back and forth with the agency on what the expressions could be and how to stylize them. For example, ice could be on natural snowy ground or floating in a minimalist environment. Here's a cool waxy one that I loved. And of course, striving for quality, so we had to keep trying new design ideas and keep finessing the look of everything. In this case, sand, seeing whether it would look good with just natural colors or more graphic and vibrant colors, or trying the logo in a darker natural environment. So for each one, we had to have a macro, a mid, and a wide, and then combine them all to form the logo. But of course, we couldn't lose sight of the big picture. So this one was a really cool animation, but it didn't quite fit in the final edit, so we had to let it go. So now we're looking at the final designs. And another big theme was the sun rising and moving and progressing through the spot. each shot have to have a sense of movement of the sun. And here we have some of the expressions. We have moss, ice, crystals, cherry blossoms, bioluminescence, water, and particles. Let's check out the piece. Thanks. And then we also did shorter standalone pieces for the expressions. Check out a few of them. Cherry blossom. And then the water. And then we also did some 3D end tags. And then mnemonics rolled out globally. So now I'll talk about working documentaries. So as well as titles and commercials, we also do a lot of content for documentaries. And they can be quite different because instead of doing 30 or 60 seconds, you often have to do 10 or 20 minutes worth of content. And sometimes they have a lot of repeating assets like stills or maps. So you have to have effective and creative solutions to fit the story. It's fun though because you get a lot of time learning about subjects and immersing yourself in subjects you often know nothing about, like American football. This one's for Tom Brady about his career for ESPN, and then another for Netflix about quarterbacks. Often the subject matter inspires the graphical language. So for the college admission scandal, we did a lot of FBI wiretap screens. And then for Goodnight Oppie about the Mars rover, we did these lo-fi operating systems. And for this one about a forgotten Polish sculptor for Netflix, he had this beautiful scrapbook. So we recreated the scrapbooks and added camera moves and lighting and lens blurs and dust to give it a cinematic look. And this one about gerrymandering, we had lots of maps. So we decided to project them onto a CG warehouse to make it more interesting and dynamic and to tie in with the title sequence aesthetic. So moving on now to All the Light. This just came out on Netflix. It's about a blind French girl living in a small town in France in World War II, gets invaded by the Nazis. And her father builds a wooden model of the city so she can help her visualize the city. So this is an example of a pitch where they already had an idea, they had the model and they wanted to do something with that, but they wanted ideas on how to stylize it and to make something poetic. So we started some initial research to help with the idea generation. So here we have lots of notes about the story and the characters, photos of the wooden model and photos of the real city. Then starting studying light and different ways of using light and atmosphere, looking at braille and textures. The girl does these radio broadcasts, so we wanted to have textures that could represent knowledge, mathematics, and science. And then here we have some different ideas for the types of shots and also other props to include to represent some different characters and to represent humanity. So we started design exploration on some different ideas to present. So this one's about revealing the wooden model city through light and camera moves, starting macro and slowly revealing the city. And then there's this crystal called the Sea of Flames hidden in one of the buildings. And so the idea was that would rise up and that would help crescendo to the main title. Similar idea, but different way of texturing the building and using light. And here the idea was the light's moving through, and as the light hits the area, the buildings start to rise up, almost as if she's starting to visualize it, and it completes the city. And this one, we were using volumetric light to intercut, so we don't just have the building, we intercut with this light, and then we're using it to show humanity, the people in the city, and also some of the Nazi soldiers. And then we have the Braille letters and this beautiful volumetric light coming through, and also hints of the mathematics and the knowledge going through to the main title. This one we were doing cross between the real city and the wooden model, and we have these pamphlets falling down from the sky to tie in with one of the first shots of the series. And then this last one, again using buildings and props, but giving it a painterly style. So I ended up liking these ones. These frames actually done in Unreal by this guy called Ken and Fischer. But they wanted to change the narrative, so no Sea of Flames crystal. And then they also wanted to show more humanity through the props. So we moved into production in C4D and started to look at some of the humanity through the props. So we have the Braille stick and the glasses of her uncle, some of the woodworking tools, but again, trying to show the humanity. So we have the glass of wine, the Braille books. Now we're checking out motion tests by Gryun Kim. So the only ingredients we have is light and the buildings. So we had to be really intentional with how it was used and tried to tell a poetic story. So we're slowly revealing parts of the buildings as if she's starting to see it. We have these slow slits of light kind of moving and opening in the tight shots. And as we start to reveal more of the city, there's more ambient light coming in. Let's check out the spot. Thank you. So now I'll talk about how I pitch. So if you can, it's important to try and stay relaxed. Sometimes you're talking to big name directors or big clients, but at the end of the day, we're all just people doing our jobs. So try not to get intimidated. Know your work. This comes back to immersing yourself in the brief at the beginning and then you can answer any questions that come up or ask your own questions and sound informed. And if you can, try to turn it into a conversation. You know, if you're relaxed and the discussion flows, maybe some jokes come out, the client feels good, everyone's feeling good, and it can help with that, with the pitch. So that's some of my story, but I've also had a few bumps in the road like everyone else. You know, myself, like everyone, we deal with moments of self-doubt or sleepless nights from stress or deadlines or FOMO from other people's work on Insta. Outside of work, you know, sometimes we have to deal with loved ones passing away or pressures of raising a family or relationship troubles. But sometimes you gotta just put your game face on. You know, sometimes when you're about to make it, step up and you get a setback. But that's, yeah, as a lifelong football fan, it was really exciting to see the home team do so well in the World Cup. Exciting and emotional times. So yeah, thanks very much. Duncan Elms is my name. You can check out my work on Instagram or my website or Behance. Please come and say hello. I'd love to talk to as many people as possible, or just send me a message. And thanks very much.